Alright, so converting maps for CarX. So the purpose of this tutorial is going to be simply how to show you to take a Assetto map and do a basic conversion with your extras, say your spawns, your lights, and your cameras, and port that into a playable CarX model. So I'm not going to go super deep into what Blender can do because I am also not an advanced user and I don't know all of what Blender can do, but I can help you get from a Assetto file to a file that CarX can run and you can play on and enjoy. So let's get straight into it. The tools that you are going to need: first up, you are going to need the game, of course, that is CarX Drift Racing Online. Next, you are going to need Goat's Map Loader. That's going to be the utility that you can use to load the map into CarX. We are going to be solely working in Blender for this tutorial. You can use 3ds Max, but I don't use 3ds Max or know it, so for this tutorial it'll only be in Blender. When you are working in Blender, it's helpful to have Zi9's CarX tools, and I believe it's also necessary for the export of your extras, being your spawns, lights, and cameras, and having them load up correctly in the game. Next, you're going to need Kn5 Converter, and that is what's going to convert the Assetto Kn5 models into a file type that Blender can use. And lastly, you have XnConvert, and that's simply a batch converter for images, so it will allow you to convert your DDS, JPEGs, and your BMPs and such in bulk into a PNG that's a bit more CarX friendly. So in consideration of time, I'm not going to show you guys how to download and install all the utilities that you're going to need to do the conversion, but I will put a link to all the files or tools that you will need, and links to any of the discords if you need help. But the rest of this tutorial is going to assume you have everything set up and ready. Alright, so what is next? So you found your Assetto map that you want to convert. For this tutorial specifically, we are going to work with the Slide Boy skid pad here. It's a pretty small layout, but it has enough objects that you can kind of get an idea of what to expect when you're doing your conversion. So let's go ahead and extract that so we can get a folder. I've got the folder here. I like to work with the folder that's innermost to the files that I need. So I'm going to take that and copy and paste that into another directory that I've set up. And in this directory here, conversion tutorial, that's where I'll be doing all my conversion work. And then when I have a exported model that's ready, I will copy and paste that folder into my Steam Apps Plugins Maps folder that CarX actually pulls from when it's time to load the map. I don't suggest doing your conversion work in CarX's folder because it's not good for version control, and if you fuck shit up, you're gonna have to spend time debugging. So use a different working directory, and then when you have a model, or sorry, a layout that's ready for CarX, you can copy and paste all those items over into the CarX plugins folder. Alright, so now we have our working directory set up. Now we can move on to actually converting the Assetto Kn5 model. If I click in this Assetto Kn5 model here into a file type that Blender will use. So the Kn5 model, that's going to be the actual map file. With Assetto, it'll give you AI, data extension, and these are all things that Assetto needs to run. But to do this conversion, we are looking at this Kn5 model. So go ahead and grab Kn5 Converter. I just put that in a separate folder with other mod tools I use. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste that into the directory where you're doing your conversions. You'll take the Kn5 model and drag it, hover over the Kn5 Converter script and release, and you'll see your command window will come up. It'll run and it'll take the information stored in there and extract it into a form that Blender can use. So what we have as a result now, we have a texture folder that has all the textures for all the objects that are in our model. We have like an FBX file, but the file that we'll be using for Blender is going to be an obj file. So here we have an .obj.object file. There's also a second obj, but it has this maps file name with ZMhack attached to it. To be honest, I'm not really sure what that's for, but I don't use that, and I don't suggest you do. Just work with the object file that has the normal file name. So now that we have successfully converted our Kn5 model, finally we can go ahead and load up Blender and take a look at the map itself. So you can choose general, or you can just click elsewhere in the window and that'll go away. First we'll go ahead and delete all the default objects Blender loads up with. Then we'll come top left of the screen, go to File, then we're going to go to Import. You're looking for wavefront.obj, click it. Now we need to navigate to our directory where we did our conversion. So for me that was conversion tutorial, Sliboid skid pad. We're going to find the .obj file. Once again, don't use the ZMhack one. Now before you import, go to the right hand side here on geometry. Make sure you uncheck split by object and check split by group, and then we can import the object. So now the object has loaded in. Here you can see the map on this here right side. You can see all the individual objects that make up the map. So you got your road, grass, and then your tree alphas here. We got some skid marks and whatnot. Take a look at the map. Now you'll see if I zoom out, the view starts to clip. What you can do to prevent that, click on this little arrow right here and your tool window will pop out. We'll go to tool, or sorry, we need to go to view. You're looking at clip start, clip end, go to clip end, add a few zeros, and now I can zoom out and still see the map. So right now the map looks a little bit funny, and that is because of the viewport mode we are in. Right now we are here in solid mode. If you can see my cursor, solid mode. If we click right to the right, it'll put us in materials mode, and now we can see it looks a little bit more like an actual map, how it would look in the game. We can see all the materials, and right off the bat we can see, all right, there's something wrong with this grass. It's coming up blue. Actually, if I go to the textures folder, you can see it's here in terrain base. I can also confirm that in shading. Go down to the node editor, find the grass that's here, and for the grass texture it's coming up as terrain base, but we'll deal with that later. So the first thing you would want to do, you have all these objects here on your right side pane. You can see there's no sort of organization. So now what you want to do is go ahead and sort all of these objects into categories. So the important categories are your alphas, like these trees, and then you want to have things that have specific physics, like your roads, in their own certain category. And what this will let you do is do work in bulk. So instead of having to set physics or enable or disable an alpha on individual objects, if you sort and group these into certain categories, you can then do a select all and set physics on that whole entire collection, and it'll just save you a lot of time. So now I'm going to go ahead and do all of my organization work. So I'm going to have this part sped up in the interest of time, but I'll do a few here shortly. So grass, let's take a look at the grass. So that's all the grass. Put my mouse in the viewport. I can do Shift L and that'll bring up select linked. I want to do linked material. So now you can see that selected all the other pieces of grass. Also have some other stuff that probably isn't grass. So if you're doing a Shift L and you select other material, even though it lets you do it faster, you want to go back and look at what you selected to make sure it's what you wanted. So I'm pretty sure I don't want those, but we'll take a look at those later. I can do M to make a new collection. I'll say this is going to be grass, hit enter. Now here in the right side pane, I can see I have my new collection with all those options, or sorry, all those objects that I selected. So let's go ahead and take a look at what this is. So I can click on it, put my cursor into the viewport, hit the period on the numpad, and it'll take me to that object. So I can see that object has the same material, but that's not a piece of glass. What that actually is a hot lap start marker that Assetto uses. I don't need that, so I can go ahead and just delete it. All of these AC things you really don't need. So these are all pit lane markers. Let's go ahead and take a look at that one. Here's a start marker for another car, I believe. Here's another start marker. So I can just go ahead and select all of those in bulk, delete them. What does that leave me with? That leaves me now with grass here, bit of grass there, bit of grass there, and now I'm just going to repeat that process until I have all of these objects organized and categorized. So for the sake of instruction, I'll do a little bit more organization for you. So let's go ahead and sort out the road. So if you click on the little eye icon, that'll actually let you kind of see what that piece is, because you can click on it and it'll highlight it. But for me, sometimes it helps if I just take it out of the viewport. So that's that piece, that's that piece of road, that's that piece of road. So I can select all of those. I'll go to M. I don't have a collection, so I can do new collection, but actually I'll show you a different way to do a new collection. So I'm going to go to the main outermost level, new collection, and it'll take me all the way to the bottom. Here's my new collection I set up. You go to ID data, rename, and now I can name it road. Oh, not roke. Road. There we go. Whatever. So let's find the road again. Select all those. We'll do M road. So now all of those road pieces are there in road. And also another helpful thing, now that you have those all in the collection, you can do the I to remove it from the viewport right here, and that will take off all three of them. Very helpful. So now I'm just going to do the rest of them until it's all organized. Alright, so here I've got some, it says wall, but I can tell because it's a chain link fence, but there's a bunch of black in between the links. That would be an alpha. If I go to CarX tools, I can see if right here it's wall sub-zero. I can do enable alpha, and now it looks more like a proper chain link fence. So I know that's an alpha. I can also hit the eye icon and see, okay, well, that's linked to that. So that is the alpha. I need to put that in its own separate alpha category, so I can then hit enable alpha and do that work in bulk. So I'll make a new collection, and this is going to be my alphas. You can break it down into tree alphas and do a separate collection for your structure alphas. which actually I'm going to go ahead and do for this tutorial. So here's my structure. Alphas. Okay, I've made my new collection, and just so I know that I've sorted this, I'm going to go ahead and hide it, that collection, from the viewport. So here's another interesting note. We have all we have left to organize now is this black thing, which actually happens to be, if I turn on the road again, you can see that's the skid marks on the road, and the skid marks are going to be an alpha, but its title, or sorry, its name comes up as wall, and that is why you want to be careful what you're organizing and go back and check, because even though this says wall, it's definitely not a wall. It's definitely a skid mark alpha. We're going to go ahead and put that into its own collection for skid marks. Alright, so now this was our original collection that had all the objects in it. You can see this collection is now empty, and now we have organized it into all these different little parts and pieces. We have our grass, our road, our no collision cones, our wall or our barriers, and then any sort of alphas on structures, and then alphas in the landscape, and we have our skid mark alphas. And this is why I just take it out to viewport. Now I can see there's nothing left, so everything is organized. You can go ahead and just delete that original collection. Okay, so now that everything is organized, I'm going to turn everything back on just so I can see what I'm working with here, because we are going to set the physics, and to set the physics you kind of need to see what you're working with, right? So I'm going to go ahead and set the physics on road. If you go into your CarX maps tools, you'll see all your physics material here. So you have your asphalt, grass, curb, sand, icy road, dirt, and so on and so forth. That's pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to right click, select all the objects in road, and I'm going to come up to asphalt. Before I do that, I'm going to open that collection so you can see. So you can see its name here, 1 road 0. Select all the objects, set it to asphalt, and now you can see there is a prefix on it that says road, and that's how you know that has the asphalt physics set on it. So if I take off asphalt physics, it goes back to the original name, asphalt. Now it has the prefix on it. And then I'm going to do the rest of the collections and set the physics that I need. So for this tutorial, to make it simple, I'm just going to take all my barriers and set them to a no collision object type. I'm going to select all my structure alphas and enable alpha. I'm going to take all my landscape alphas and enable alpha on those. Now you can see the trees look better. Take my skid mark alpha, select, and enable alpha on there, and now you can see how the skid marks would actually render in game. Alright, so where are we at? Just to recap before moving on, we successfully converted our Kn5. We brought it into Blender. We took a preliminary look at the objects. We went ahead and sorted all our objects by some sort of category, be it physics type or alpha type. We went ahead and set all our physics, so you can see our roads are roads. The walls that we want to be no collision have no collision object type set on it. Our alphas, like our tree alphas, have alpha enabled. I can disable it, and you can see enable. But before we do our first test run, we need to set up at least one spawn point You don't necessarily have to, but it will just make things simpler so you don't have to F10 and teleport to that location. So I made a new collection, highlight that collection. You can just hit spawn, or a smarter thing to do is to take your cursor, place it on the map somewhere. So where's the pit? I think this is the pit lane. Place my cursor there, hit spawn, and in that collection now I have my spawn point. I can put my cursor in the viewport, hit the period, and it'll zoom in on that object. You can see it's hovering a little bit above the map. That's not really too bad. If you have it too high, your car will smash in. It might flip over, so I'm just gonna lower that a little bit there. And now the map is in a state where I can technically export it and run it. We still need to deal with this weird looking blue grass, but at least I can do a first test run just to make sure there isn't anything else I'm forgetting. Also, it helps to at least do a first test run before you get too deep into setting up all your camera spawns and lights and whatnot. All right, so let's go ahead and export this now. So this is kind of a tricky part. We'll set up a name for the map. So this is going to be, we'll just call it Skid Pad. What's going on here? Skid Pad Beta V1. And the path is not going to be your actual plugins folder in your Steam folder, the CarX folder in your Steam folder, because we set up that working directory. And for version control, I like to export it there and then have only my current working version, or the version I'm testing, in my actual CarX folder. So I'm going to go back into the conversion folder, which was conversion tutorial, slide voice skidpad, and I'm going to make a new folder in here, and this is going to be skidpad beta v1. Click that, select export folder, and here your texture mode. So that is going to give you the relation of the file path to the texture. So all your textures have to be linked so they load up correctly in CarX. It's a little bit hard to explain, so let me go ahead and look at one I've done. So we'll go to Hanjo and we'll take a look at the materials file, not in Photoshop, but here in Atom. No Photoshop, get out of here. All right, so here you can see this is what I'm referring to. So depending on what option you choose in texture mode, this file path to this texture will either be the absolute file path, which means it will start with your main drive, like your C, D drive or whatever, and then go all the way down the line till it gets to this file. But because you're going to be giving these maps to other people, you just want to make sure that it links correctly. So the way I organize my folder once the map is completely converted, let's take a look at Hanjo. So if I go into Hanjo version 2, I have a texture folder, and then I have the materials file, and I have my object file, and then my extras file. And if I go into my materials file, this means I can give anybody this folder, and it just needs to look for texture, and the link will work. It won't have to go down an absolute file path that's going to hit an incorrect directory and fuck shit up. So the way I do that is by, once again, I have my working directory. Let's go back here. Sorry if this is getting a little confusing. But if I make my folder I'm exporting to here, skidpad beta v1, and then I set the texture mode to relative, what happens is now all the file association is relative to where Kn5 ran. So I ran Kn5 here. There's my texture folder, so it's only going, the file string is only going to start at texture, and then so that way I can just take all my textures. Don't actually do this. This is just for instruction because we haven't converted our textures to PNG. I can put my texture in there now, and now when the game loads up, it just needs to find texture and then the image. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a first export of this map. So we have Skidpad beta. It's in the folder that I want. Yep, and there's texture. I did my texture mode as relative. Now I'm going to export the map. And that's going to export everything except spawns, cameras, and lights. Your spawn, camera, and lights is all going to be extra data. So then I can hit export extra data. I'm going to go back to my working directory. There's a Skidpad beta, and now you can see I have my materials file, which has all the links for those textures, or the file links for those textures, and some data about those materials. And then I have my actual map file, and then this here is my .objdata, and that's going to have information on my spawn point. So if I go into Atom, you can see here I just have the one spawn I set up, and I can go into the materials file. This is how you, if you're having issues with your textures not showing up, maybe they load in with some weird default color that Unity will give them, maybe like a gray or a purple, you can open this .mtl materials file with any sort of text editor. You can use Notepad. I use Atom, and then here you need to check your file path. So for my file path, it's coming up correct. Just look in textures and then look for that file. Texture file, you can see I still haven't done any conversions because I have .dds. So texture, yeah, so it's looking good. All right, before we actually run this map in CarX, we're going to want to go ahead and convert any sort of DDS, JPEGs, BMPs, anything that's not a PNG into a PNG. And to do that, you want to use XnConvert. Go ahead, open up XnConvert. So here we are on input. I'm going to take, so I copied this in. I like to keep the original textures folder with the DDS and the JPEGs just in case anything happens. I've copied that into the file I will eventually put into, or sorry, the folder that will eventually be going into CarX's folder. And I have all the textures here. For this tutorial, I'm just going to take all the textures, put them in XnConvert, go to the Output tab. Here you can have your format. So for us, it's going to be PNG, and these are going to be going back into the folder that I pulled it from. You can set a specific folder, and then I want to delete the originals because I'm keeping the originals in the original texture folder that I had. So let's go ahead and convert. Yes, delete original. All right, so that's done. We can go ahead and take a look just to make sure. So now you can see everything's a PNG. Just to confirm, you can go to the original textures folder, and we had DDS and JPEGs and a few PNGs. You can also do a count, 18 files, just to make sure everything got converted. 18 files. All right, so everything's in there. So now what we need to do, now that those file types have changed, we need to go back into our materials file here. And we need to change all of these DDS extensions into PNG. So Control F to find all. We're going to do .dds, replace with .png, replace all. Go to the next, .jpeg, 3 found, replace all. Let's make sure .bmps or any of those. No, so everything's done. Make sure you save that file. And now I can copy this folder, which has my textures, my material, my map object, and my extras file, my spawn. I can go ahead and copy that entire folder, go to my Steam Maps, CarX folder, Beppin, plugins, go into maps, just like you would for any other map, and go ahead and paste it in there. Then we'll go ahead and bring up CarX. Alright, so there it is, SkidPad Beta V1. Let's take a look. And we successfully spawned in the correct location. We didn't come crashing in. I can drive on the map. My cones, I can go through them because I set no collision. My grass is still blue because we never went ahead and dealt with that. Alright, no collision on those is correct. My trees, I don't see any of the black mark on the trees, so my alpha seems to be correct here. Let's take a look at my skid marks. Skid marks look okay. My chain link fence looks alright. Just look at it in first person how I actually drive. And the map seems drivable. Alright, so now we can go back to Blender and work on getting our grass to come up correctly. We can go ahead and maybe set up one light. We'll set up a few more spawns, and you can actually do your extras without leaving CarX, so you don't need to clear out this map. That's what this reload extras button is for. So I'm going to leave CarX running, and then I'm going to go back to Blender, and let's take a look at this grass here. So if you remember, I went and found the image texture that this grass object is linked to by going to the top. I went to shading. Down here at the bottom, I believe they call this the node editor, at least that's what I call it. I went to click on the object in question, which was any of these grasses, but we'll just look at this first one. And here is the, let's see if we can get this lined up so you can see better. So link to the base color of this object is this PNG. We don't want to use that PNG. We are going to, let's take a look at what textures it comes with. So let's go back to our working directory. So there is a grass texture in here. They are 1600. So if I go into the node editor, I can actually go and find that texture. Since I already made a PNG version, I'm just going to choose that PNG version, 1600X, open image there. And so now at least we have something that looks like grass. It's kind of shitty grass, but for the purposes of this tutorial, that is going to be fine. So now we have a grass texture set up. Go back to the layout view there. And that seems about it in terms of model work. So let's go ahead and set up a few more extras. So click on your cursor. We'll put a spawn here. Click on the collection we want it in and hit where is it, spawn, and we'll do another spawn right there, spawn. Let's rename this spawns. Okay, set up a new collection for a camera. Alright, what happened here? New collection for a camera. And let's see. Put a camera right there. Take a look at the camera. Alright, so the camera's on the floor. This is your move tool here. This is your rotate, scale. Let's move it up on the Z axis a little bit. And that seems to be good enough. Cool, we'll do another camera just for the sake of it. Here. I'll just give that one, yeah, that's fine. And then we'll set up one light. And we'll do a spotlight. Okay, spotlight is there. So if you look in these tabs, you'll see one that looks like a little light bulb. Here you can set your wattage, you can set a radius, you can set the cone angle and the blend. Looking at the map loader code, the only ones that actually get translated into Unity is going to be your power, your color, and your cone angle. So let's just give it a really wide cone angle because there's only one light, so we'll just do, I don't know, 100 degrees, and we'll set it up on 20 watts, and we'll give it a little bit of color, a little bit of yellow. Could have just done this RGB, but whatever. So great, we got our light there. Now if we hadn't change any of the textures, we could just export data, and in CarX go to reload extras, and it'll do a reload in place, and your extras would just pop up. But since I changed the image texture for the grass to this texture, now we need to export the entire map. So I'll do export map. And this is where version control can get messed up, because I didn't want to actually make a new version for this time. I just went ahead and did export map, and what it now has done is overwritten the original files here. I still need to export my extra data. You can load in a sun. Let's go ahead and just make a sun here. I don't really use suns, but bam. Make sure we have a sun. Cool, we have a sun. The sun is my baby. It is my blessing. Let's put it above the map a little bit. And bam. Go to export data. While that's loaded up, we'll clear this map. And we're going to take those items and put it back into, or sorry, overwrite what's in the CarX folder. Go back to CarX. We'll reload Skidpad beta. Alright, so here for an example, we missed a step. So we can see all our grass, but all our trees look kind of funny. The barriers shouldn't be all black, and so what's going on is there is a material extra, or sorry, a materials error, because we didn't check the .mtl file and make sure that our materials were set up correctly. So yeah, see, we did a new export of the entire map. It went back to having the .dds and .jpeg file extension. So we're going to go and find those .jpeg, .png. We'll go ahead and replace .dds, and we'll go ahead and replace, and then we'll save. So I did that rename actually in the CarX folder. I didn't do it in the working directory I was working out of, so I'm going to go back to that directory and make sure I do it on that file, or I really could have just copied and pasted it back, but whatever. So cool. Let's go back to CarX. And we'll do the Skidpad beta. And now we are back to something that looks correct. All our textures now are linking correctly. We can see the grass that we've changed. I'm going to go ahead and just do a lap here so we can get a look at the camera. Let's go ahead and take a look at the light. Alright, so you can see the light on the ground. You can actually see the light cone. It didn't used to be like that before the CarX night mode DLC. Let's open up Kino so you can see the light a little bit better. And there is the light. So now we can go ahead and take a look at our camera. And there's a camera that we set up. So yeah, that is converting Assetto maps for CarX. If you have any questions, you can always DM me on Discord, or you can just ask any of the guys in the CarX mods or GOAT's Discord server. They're very helpful. Shout out to all the people that helped me learn how to convert maps, and yeah, enjoy.